Hey, implicit connotations. Well, I'm Elise from the Crowdfunded Translation Project, and wanted to just tell you a little bit about what that project is and give you some updates about what I've been doing with your support. The Inessa Armand project. After finishing Kalantai's social basis of the female question, I put out a call for suggestions for the next project. One of those suggestions that I received was to translate the essays and letters of Inessa Armand, Kalantai's predecessor at the Bolshevik women's section. Suppressed by Stalin and never translated into English, Armand's writings enrich our understanding of the Bolshevik women's movement in the run-up to the October Revolution and the early days of revolutionary Russia. With your support, I have been able to translate all of her extant essays and am currently raising the last $1,950 to cover the cost of translating the remainder of her extant works, which at this point is just her correspondence. If you would like to support the project, all contributions are beautiful. You'll find links in the description. The Punto Final project is a project that is really just at its inception. Punto Final, for those unfamiliar with it, i.e. likely most of the people watching this right now, was a magazine edited by Manuel Caviese Donoso that ran from 1965 to the eve of the 1973 CIA-backed coup in Chile, and then from 1989 to 2018, publishing a grand total of 894 issues. In addition to being a platform for theoretical and ideological debate, they were also a source of excellent political journalism. Their real-time analysis of political developments in Chile, the rise of the Unidad Popular, the looming coup, and the limits of electoralism has aged extremely well, and is well worth reading for anyone interested in the period. The Chilean left is sort of in a media bubble, and the Anglosphere left really doesn't do a great job of breaking that bubble and really building connections there. So the discussion that you hear in English about Chile, even in supposed left outlets, such as Jargon, often has little or nothing to do with the state of discussion amongst comrades in Chile. So this is part of my attempts to contribute to sort of breaking down that bubble and fostering some understanding of the thought amongst revolutionaries in Chile, both historically and currently. I have so far translated 7 articles, including a long read on electoralism versus armed struggle called Chile, the Ballad or the Bullet by Punto Final editor Manuel Caviese, and currently am working on various pieces of political analysis from the eve of the electoral campaign that would bring Salvador Allende to power, or at least to government. These include discussions of electoral versus revolutionary strategy and how and to what extent these things can coexist, discussions of US imperialist interference in Chilean politics, One of the challenges of this project, since its inception, has been getting the word out. The billionaire-controlled black box algorithms that dominate our lives don't like small creators or small projects. Nor are they particularly keen on ideological viewpoints that are inconsistent with the whims of billionaires. What's more, they positively detest anyone who isn't paying for reach. And then they turn around and make it ever harder to do even that in a useful way. The result of all this is that there are definitely considerably more people who would be interested in this project than actually see any of my posts about it. And that's why I have a small favor to ask you. Tell your friends about the crowdfunded translation project. Share the completed translations, link the Patreon and the Facebook pages. All those links are in the description. Let people know that this project exists and what it's all about. Let them know that I want to hear their ideas for future crowdfunded translation projects at crowdfunded_translations@elisehendrick.com. And if you've got any ideas, I'd love to hear them. Ultimately, the crowdfunded translation project is for us all. The whole idea is to translate texts that have fallen through the cracks by making it economically viable for a professional translator, i.e. me, to work on them and to make the results freely available to everyone. I think that a lot of great things are coming out of the project, and even more can result from it yet. But it all depends on making the project visible to the people who might benefit from it and consider supporting it. Thank you for watching for this length of time. I hope you found it interesting, and I hope that it will encourage you to get in touch with the crowdfunded translation project, look at our translations, to get in touch with, to get involved with the crowdfunded translation project. Make suggestions, read the translations, let people know that this exists. This could be a great resource, but it's been a real fucker trying to get the word out about it. So thank you very much. Even watching this and commenting and leaving a like and sharing it on your platforms, or even to yourself in an email apparently, will help increase the visibility of this video and thus of this project. Thanks so much, and see you on the next stream. Thank you very much. Even watching this and commenting and leaving a like and sharing it on your platforms, or even to yourself in an email apparently, will help increase the visibility of this video and thus of this project. Thanks so much, and see you on the next stream. Hey, implicit connotations. I'm Elise from the Crowdfunded Translation Project, and wanted to just tell you a little bit about what that project is and give you some updates about what I've been doing with your support. The Inessa Armand project. After finishing Kalantai's social basis of the female question, I put out a call for suggestions for the next project. One of those suggestions that I received was to translate the essays and letters of Inessa Armand, Kalantai's predecessor at the Bolshevik women's section. Suppressed by Stalin and never translated into English, Armand's writings enrich our understanding of the Bolshevik women's movement in the run-up to the October Revolution and the early days of revolutionary Russia. With your support, I have been able to translate all of her extant essays and am currently raising the last $1,950 to cover the cost of translating the remainder of her extant works, which at this point is just her correspondence. If you would like to support the project, all contributions are beautiful. You'll find links in the description. The Punto Final project is a project that is really just at its inception. Punto Final, for those unfamiliar with it, i.e. likely most of the people watching this right now, was a magazine edited by Manuel Caviese Donoso that ran from 1965 to the eve of the 1973 CIA-backed coup in Chile, and then from 1989 to 2018, publishing a grand total of 894 issues. In addition to being a platform for theoretical and ideological debate, they were also a source of excellent political journalism. Their real-time analysis of political developments in Chile, the rise of the Unidad Popular, the looming coup, and the limits of electoralism has aged extremely well, and is well worth reading for anyone interested in the period. The Chilean left is sort of in a media bubble, and the Anglosphere left really doesn't do a great job of breaking that bubble and really building connections there. So the discussion that you hear in English about Chile, even in supposed left outlets, such as CROWDFUNDED, often has little or nothing to do with the state of discussion amongst comrades in Chile. So this is part of my attempts to contribute to sort of breaking down that bubble and fostering some understanding of the thought amongst revolutionaries in Chile, both historically and currently. I have so far translated 7 articles, including a long read on electoralism versus armed struggle called Chile, the Ballot or the Bullet by Punto Final editor Manuel Cabiese, and currently am working on various pieces of political analysis from the eve of the electoral campaign that would bring Salvador Allende to power, or at least to government. These include discussions of electoral versus revolutionary strategy and how and to what extent these things can coexist, discussions of US imperialist interference in Chilean politics, One of the challenges of this project, since its inception, has been getting the word out. The billionaire-controlled black box algorithms that dominate our lives don't like small creators or small projects. Nor are they particularly keen on ideological viewpoints that are inconsistent with the whims of billionaires. What's more, they positively detest anyone who isn't paying for reach. And then they turn around and make it ever harder to do even that in a useful way. The result of all this is that there are definitely considerably more people who would be interested in this project than actually see any of my posts about it. And that's why I have a small favor to ask you. Tell your friends about the crowdfunded translation project. Share the completed translations, link the Patreon and the Facebook pages. All those links are in the description. Let people know that this project exists and what it's all about. Let them know that I want to hear their ideas for future crowdfunded translation projects at crowdfunded_translations@elisehendrick.com. And if you've got any ideas, I'd love to hear them. Ultimately, the crowdfunded translation project is for us all. The whole idea is to translate texts that have fallen through the cracks by making it economically viable for a professional translator, i.e. me, to work on them and to make the results freely available to everyone. I think that a lot of great things are coming out of the project, and even more can result from it yet. But it all depends on making the project visible to the people who might benefit from it and consider supporting it. Thank you for watching for this length of time. I hope you found it interesting, and I hope that it will encourage you to get in touch with the crowdfunded translation project, look at our translations, to get in touch with, to get involved with the crowdfunded translation project. Make suggestions, read the translations, let people know that this exists. This could be a great resource, but it's been a real fucker trying to get the word out about it. So thank you very much. Even watching this and commenting and leaving a like and sharing it on your platforms, or even to yourself in an email apparently, will help increase the visibility of this video and thus of this project. Thanks so much, and see you on the next stream. Thank you very much. Even watching this and commenting and leaving a like and sharing it on your platforms, or even to yourself in an email apparently, will help increase the visibility of this video and thus of this project. Thanks so much, and see you on the next stream. Hey, implicit connotations. Well, I'm Elise from the Crowdfunded Translation Project, and wanted to just tell you a little bit about what that project is and give you some updates about what I've been doing with your support. The Inessa Armand project. After finishing Kalantai's social basis of the female question, I put out a call for suggestions for the next project. One of those suggestions that I received was to translate the essays and letters of Inessa Armand, Kalantai's predecessor at the Bolshevik Women's section. Suppressed by Stalin and never translated into English, Armand's writings enrich our understanding of the Bolshevik women's movement in the run-up to the October Revolution and the early days of revolutionary Russia. With your support, I have been able to translate all of her extant essays and am currently raising the last $1,950 to cover the cost of translating the remainder of her extant works, which at this point is just her correspondence. If you would like to support the project, all contributions are beautiful. You'll find links in the description. The Punto Final project is a project that is really just at its inception. Punto Final, for those unfamiliar with it, i.e. likely most of the people watching this right now, was a magazine edited by Manuel Caviese Donoso that ran from 1965 to the eve of the 1973 CIA-backed coup in Chile, and then from 1989 to 2018, publishing a grand total of 894 issues. In addition to being a platform for theoretical and ideological debate, they were also a source of excellent political journalism. Their real-time analysis of political developments in Chile, the rise of the Unidad Popular, the looming coup, and the limits of electoralism has aged extremely well, and is well worth reading for anyone interested in the period. The Chilean left is sort of in a media bubble, and the Anglosphere left really doesn't do a great job of breaking that bubble and really building connections there. So the discussion that you hear in English about Chile, even in supposed left outlets, such as Jargon, often has little or nothing to do with the state of discussion amongst comrades in Chile. So this is part of my attempts to contribute to sort of breaking down that bubble and fostering some understanding of the thought amongst revolutionaries in Chile, both historically and currently. I have so far translated 7 articles, including a long read on electoralism versus armed struggle called Chile, the Ballot or the Bullet by Punto Final editor Manuel Caviese, and currently am working on various pieces of political analysis from the eve of the electoral campaign that would bring Salvador Allende to power, or at least to government. These include discussions of electoral versus revolutionary strategy and how and to what extent these things can coexist, discussions of US imperialist interference in Chilean politics, One of the challenges of this project, since its inception, has been getting the word out. The billionaire-controlled black box algorithms that dominate our lives don't like small creators or small projects. Nor are are they particularly keen on ideological viewpoints that are inconsistent with the whims of billionaires. What's more, they positively detest anyone who isn't paying for reach, and then they turn around and make it ever harder to do even that in a useful way. The result of all this is that there are definitely considerably more people who would be interested in this project than actually see any of my posts about it. And that's why I have a small favor to ask you. Tell your friends about the crowdfunded translation project. Share the completed translations, link the Patreon and the Facebook pages. All those links are in the description. Let people know that this project exists and what it's all about. Let them know that I want to hear their ideas for future crowdfunded translation projects at crowdfunded_translations@elisehendrick.com. And if you've got any ideas, I'd love to hear them. Ultimately, the crowdfunded translation project is for us all. The whole idea is to translate texts that have fallen through the cracks by making it economically viable for a professional translator, i.e. me, to work on them and to make the results freely available to everyone. I think that a lot of great things are coming out of the project, and even more can result from it yet. But it all depends on making the project visible to the people who might benefit from it and consider supporting it. Thank you for watching for this length of time. I hope you found it interesting, and I hope that it will encourage you to get in touch with the crowdfunded translation project, look at our translations, to get in touch with, to get involved with the crowdfunded translation project. Make suggestions, read the translations, let people know that this exists. This could be a great resource, but it's been a real fucker trying to get the word out about it. So thank you very much. Even watching this and commenting and leaving a like and sharing it on your platforms, or even to yourself in an email apparently, will help increase the visibility of this video and thus of this project. Thanks so much, and see you on the next stream. Thank you very much. Even watching this and commenting and leaving a like and sharing it on your platforms, or even to yourself in an email apparently, will help increase the visibility of this video and thus of this project. Thanks so much, and see you on the next stream. Hey, implicit connotations. I'm Elise from the Crowdfunded Translation Project, and wanted to just tell you a little bit about what that project is and give you some updates about what I've been doing with your support. The Inessa Armand project. After finishing Kalantai's social basis of the female question, I put out a call for suggestions for the next project. One of those suggestions that I received was to translate the essays and letters of Inessa Armand, Kalantai's predecessor at the Bolshevik Women's section. Suppressed by Stalin and never translated into English, Armand's writings enrich our understanding of the Bolshevik women's movement in the run-up to the October Revolution and the early days of revolutionary Russia. With your support, I have been able to translate all of her extant essays and am currently raising the last $1,950 to cover the cost of translating the remainder of her extant works, which at this point is just her correspondence. If you would like to support the project, all contributions are beautiful. You'll find links in the description. The Punto Final project is a project that is really just at its inception. Punto Final, for those unfamiliar with it, i.e. likely most of the people watching this right now, was a magazine edited by Manuel Cabiese Donoso that ran from 1965 to the eve of the 1973 CIA-backed coup in Chile, and then from 1989 to 2018, publishing a grand total of 894 issues. In addition to being a platform for theoretical and ideological debate, they were also a source of excellent political journalism. Their real-time analysis of political developments in Chile, the rise of the Unidad Popular, the looming coup, and the limits of electoralism has aged extremely well, and is well worth reading for anyone interested in the period. The Chilean left is sort of in a media bubble, and the Anglosphere left really doesn't do a great job of breaking that bubble and really building connections there. So the discussion that you hear in English about Chile, even in supposed left outlets, such as Jacobin, often has little or nothing to do with the state of discussion amongst comrades in Chile. So this is part of my attempts to contribute to sort of breaking down that bubble and fostering some understanding of the thought amongst revolutionaries in Chile, both historically and currently. I have so far translated 7 articles, including a long read on electoralism versus armed struggle called Chile, the Ballot or the Bullet by Punto Final editor Manuel Cabiese, and currently am working on various pieces of political analysis from the eve of the electoral campaign that would bring Salvador Allende to power, or at least to government. These include discussions of electoral versus revolutionary strategy and how and to what extent these things can coexist, discussions of US imperialist interference in Chilean politics, One of the challenges of this project, since its inception, has been getting the word out. The billionaire-controlled black box algorithms that dominate our lives don't like small creators or small projects. Nor are they particularly keen on ideological viewpoints that are inconsistent with the whims of billionaires. What's more, they positively detest anyone who isn't paying for reach. And then they turn around and make it ever harder to do even that in a useful way. The result of all this is that there are definitely considerably more people who would be interested in this project than actually see any of my posts about it. And that's why I have a small favor to ask you. Tell your friends about the crowdfunded translation project. Share the completed translations, link the Patreon and the Facebook pages. All those links are in the description. Let people know that this project exists and what it's all about. Let them know that I want to hear their ideas for future crowdfunded translation projects at crowdfunded_translations@elisehendrick.com. And if you've got any ideas, I'd love to hear them. Ultimately, the crowdfunded translation project is for us all. The whole idea is to translate texts that have fallen through the cracks by making it economically viable for a professional translator, i.e. me, to work on them and to make the results freely available to everyone. I think that a lot of great things are coming out of the project, and even more can result from it yet. But it all depends on making the project visible to the people who might benefit from it and consider supporting it. Thank you for watching for this length of time. I hope you found it interesting, and I hope that it will encourage you to get in touch with the crowdfunded translation project, look at our translations, to get in touch with, to get involved with the crowdfunded translation project. Make suggestions, read the translations, let people know that this exists. This could be a great resource, but it's been a real fucker trying to get the word out about it. So thank you very much. Even watching this and commenting and leaving a like and sharing it on your platforms, or even to yourself in an email apparently, will help increase the visibility of this video and thus of this project. Thanks so much, and see you on the next stream. Thank you very much. Even watching this and commenting and leaving a like and sharing it on your platforms, or even to yourself in an email apparently, will help increase the visibility of this video and thus of this project. Thanks so much, and see you on the next stream. Hey, implicit connotations. Well, I'm Elise from the Crowdfunded Translation Project, and wanted to just tell you a little bit about what that project is and give you some updates about what I've been doing with your support. The Inessa Armand project. After finishing Kalantai's social basis of the female question, I put out a call for suggestions for the next project. One of those suggestions that I received was to translate the essays and letters of Inessa Armand, Kalantai's predecessor at the Bolshevik women's section. Suppressed by Stalin and never translated into English, Armand's writings enrich our understanding of the Bolshevik women's movement in the run-up to the October Revolution and the early days of revolutionary Russia. With your support, I have been able to translate all of her extant essays and am currently raising the last $1,950 to cover the cost of translating the remainder of her extant works, which at this point is just her correspondence. If you would like to support the project, all contributions are beautiful. You'll find links in the description. Hey, implicit connotations. Hello and welcome to Hyperpolyglotting with Elise, the stream where we kind of just want to learn all the languages. I'm Elise, translator, writer, and editor with 20 working languages, and let's see, how's everybody doing, chat? As I just look at what we've got to look at today. Thought we might start out with a bit of a callback. Because people who've been watching this stream for longer will know I used to do a Duolingo speedrun. Not because I thought Duolingo was any great shakes, but mostly because the different ways in which Duolingo is not particularly good offered in what was, for a while anyway, an interesting way to talk about language acquisition and stuff like that, and to just critique the method embodied by Duolingo. But then, at a certain point, you end up saying the same thing over and over again, because the problems are the exact same ones every single time. And so that got boring, and I stopped doing it. But every once in a while, I do like to check in. Let me just get this chat widget where I can see it. And we're going to look at, this is Context First Japanese with Yuta. Very good channel for anyone who's trying to learn Japanese. And this is just an example of how utterly rubbish Duolingo is. I mean, this is truly amazing. This is called When Duolingo's Japanese is so bad, it's not even understandable.
Wait, what?
Aki wa musu koto wa shirimasu. 意味ねえよ、それ。
秋はよく蒸すことは知ります。
Yeah, that makes absolutely no sense.
Wait, what? 秋。
Like, he's not exaggerating here. This really does make absolutely no sense.
I don't understand. Aki wa aki? To be empty, aki. Or aki?
Yes. Yeah, aki. Yeah, aki. Like, emptiness. It is known that emptiness evaporates a lot. Or something.
Autumn? And musu is steaming? To be steamy, humid? Musu koto wa shirimasu? To know? Wait. I don't understand what this means. It doesn't sound like a proper sentence. Let's check the translation. Aki often runs with the sun?
Yeah. Every single bit of that is wrong. And one of the things that you'll notice here, and this is absolutely not a one-off, and it isn't even new. I mean, if you don't know this about Duolingo, they bragged about the fact that they fired everybody that they had who knew anything about languages and decided to just use probabilistic text generators for everything. So, like, don't pay these people money. Their app wasn't very good to begin with, but now it's just garbage, and they're not even putting the minimum effort into it. Now it's just complete garbage. But this was a problem with Japanese already, with these because what happened here, if you notice, okay, so the actual, what that sentence was supposed to be is, Aki wa yoku musuko to hashirimasu. But the way that it was broken down into original words broke it down to the shortest possible unit. So wa is one syllable, that is a monosyllable, and that's the shortest possible unit. So hashirimasu shirimasu exists as a word, and that is the shortest possible unit that you could. I mean, you could theoretically. I mean, yeah. Okay, I find that interesting. Now, because that isn't the shortest possible unit. I had assumed that what was going on is breaking it down, but you could actually break shirimasu into. Well, you could actually break it into 2 units. Shiri, which means bum, and masu, which can mean like a square on a board, or it can mean masturbation. But you could also do su, can be on its own as vinegar, or like a nest, an insect nest. So now I'm not even sure what the operating principle is. I thought I had it, and then I noticed this. Because what I was going to say is that it breaks it down to the smallest possible unit, and that makes a reasonable amount of sense until you get to shirimasu, because that isn't the smallest popular. So I have no idea what the algorithm is doing there. What I do know is that no person who speaks Japanese would look at this and sign off on it, because it's just wrong. Hashirimasu is to run. But this is also, as the way it is said as a sentence, doesn't make a whole lot of sense either. Because, okay, Aki, in this case, is supposed to be a person called Aki. Fine. But usually it would be considered just a little bit rude, potentially, to just call that person Aki and not Aki-san or Aki-kun. Aki, no honorific added. And that also here aids in comprehension, because then it's obvious you're talking about a person. Similarly, musuko. If you just say musuko, then that sounds like you're talking potentially about your own son. But this is somebody else's son. So normally you would tend to say musuko-san. Or something like that. There's just so much wrong with this. We'll watch Utah break it down.
Just this. Wait. How does this work? Musuko to okay, the son. Hashirimasu, to run. Okay. Duolingo like completely obliterated this sentence just more thoroughly than Titans obliterated humanity.
Yeah, and again, this is a thing that you find with Duolingo Japanese a lot,
So the
actually.
pitch accent is completely off. So it should say, 秋はよく息子と走ります。そう。秋は、はい、ローロー。よく、はい、ロー。息子と、息子と、ロー、はい、はい、はい。走ります。
Yeah, I mean, and you also just have a straight up, not even with just pitch accent, but that ha in hashirimasu, it becomes wa because it's being treated as a particle. So that's just wrong. Before you even get to the pitch accent, the pronunciation is just wrong.
Low, high, 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 low. So that's the correct pitch pattern. People say, oh, even if you don't use the correct pitch patterns, native speakers will often understand what you mean from the context, and that's not false, but there's a limit. If you mess up like Duolingo here,
plus, I mean, the other thing is, the pitch pattern is important here, but part of it is also, it's the way it's being divided up. Muskoto versus muskoto. Is it a verb that is being turned into a noun by adding koto? Or is it musko to? Son with. Yeah, I mean,
it's not understandable anymore. And also, this is...
It is fractally bad.
It's part of hashirimasu. But Duolingo say washirimasu, which completely changes the meaning, so it's not understandable anymore. So this is ha here, not wa. But here's a problem with not having any context, because when you hear the correctly pronounced version of this sentence, Aki wa yoku musuko to hashirimasu.
Yeah, I mean, if you hear it actually said correctly, without this division, without the words being divided up wrong, with the pitch accent, it's obvious what it is. I mean, the only thing you could be a little bit uncertain about there is whose son it is. And I mean, Aki is obviously a person, because Aki as a season does not run. But
it sounds like Aki actually means autumn, fall, right? So it sounds like I often run with my son during autumn.
Yeah.
But the sentence is a little unnatural, which makes it hard to understand. But if I see the translation, Aki is actually a person's name, which I didn't understand from this sentence. And I actually asked 4 other native speakers, and they thought Aki means autumn. And one of them said, Aki could sound like somebody's name, but it sounds like autumn.
Yeah, again, because it's yobishite rareteru. Instead of saying like Aki-san wa yoku musuko-san to hashirimasu toka. Using honorifics the way you normally would when talking about people, then it makes sense. Then it kind of, but when you just say Aki, it could be the season, it could be the concept of emptiness, it could be an empty thing, it can be all sorts of things.
So both the sentence in itself and the pronunciation don't work at all here. And also, Aki wa yoku musuko to hashirimasu doesn't sound like something we would say in conversation. It's something we would read in written Japanese.
Yeah.
The problem is Duolingo completely mixed up.
Yeah, and that's because of the lack of honorifics, especially. Because when you see narration, when you see sort of neutral, objective narration, that is one place where you will often, like in novels, for example, you will often see the absence of the honorifics that would otherwise be used. But but people don't talk like that, and
most of the Duolingo sentences are supposed to be colloquial, something that you would say in a conversation.
Plus, I mean, you would normally, if this were that sort of neutral kind of objective narration style, then it would generally be the plain form, hashiru, not hashirimasu.
If you throw in just written Japanese out of no context, it sounds pretty weird because my default interpretation of Duolingo sentences is as spoken Japanese. And the way we speak Japanese and when we write Japanese can be pretty different. So Duolingo
extremely.
Japanese sounds very inconsistent. It's just like throwing in random sentences, written, spoken, formal, informal, without any context. And
Plus, I mean, this is also a good example of why kanji matter. Because this would be the meaning would be fairly obvious if there were kanji. Because kanji, one of the things that they do, hey, Ata, how you doing? One of the things that kanji are useful for is they tell you where the words begin and end, because you see how they're being combined. So musuko is obviously not musukoto, because that's different kanji. So the division of words is different. So
this is at a native level. You can see how weird this sounds.
Yeah.
So let me give you a couple of conversational examples. Two colleagues talking to each other. スポーツ何かしてますか? Do you play any sports? はい。よく息子と走ってます. Yeah, I often
Yeah, no, musuko with no honorific also, which defaults to meaning you're talking about your own son.
And some other native speakers suggested that jogging する to jog would sound better. So he could also say, はい、よく息子とジョギングしてます.
Yeah.
Yes, I often jog with my son. Another example between friends, and they're gonna talk about a third person.
Oh, it's doing pretty well. I had a really nice day yesterday. I ended up going for a long walk in the woods after dealing with just the most annoying technical difficulties. See, because I got this USB hub to deal with a problem that I was having with the USB panel in the front of my computer turning on and off because it was being overloaded by external drives and things. And so that hub worked really well for that. But it was blocking, I think, the line of sight for the USB receiver for my mouse. And so I was having trouble using my mouse. It was being really annoying. So I wanted to make some adjustments there so that my mouse would work as it should and everything else would work, and so that I could also get the camera in a more convenient place as well, which would free up one of my USB 3.8 ports for my for my mouse and stuff. And I managed to get that working. But then my keyboard wouldn't work. My keyboard just stopped working. And I started moving, I was moving the fucking receiver to every free port. Not a single one of them was working. And actually, it took me about 45 minutes to finally find a configuration where I could actually get the mouse and the keyboard and the camera to work properly. Except now I'm finding the keyboard isn't quite working properly, at least when I'm sitting like this. So apparently I still have to keep working on it. So that was a little bit annoying, but it was a really nice walk yesterday. Other than that, pretty good. It's been, weather's been nice. It's been kind of a slow month in terms of contributions to the crowdfunded translation project, which is a bit difficult, trying to work on getting the word out about that more. But on the whole, not bad.
秋先輩ってなんかスポーツしてる?
Yeah, notice honorific added, in this case, senpai.
Does Aki senpai play any sports? よく息子と走ってるよ. Yeah, he often runs with his son. So if you're in a quiet, natural, and practical Japanese, maybe you can join my email group because I have both free and paid lessons.
Yeah, and I will say I really like his channel because he explains one of the things that is really challenging when you're learning Japanese, especially when you get to that sort of intermediate level where you have some kind of vocabulary and you have some understanding of what's going on, but making your Japanese actually sound natural. Hello, DTN111, how you doing? That is complicated because most people that you talk to, like most native speakers, they'll be like, yeah, that doesn't, you'll write something and it seems to make sense to you. The words make sense to you, and then you show it to somebody who is a native speaker and they're like, okay, I don't understand this. Or, okay, I kind of understand where you're going, but it sounds really weird. And figuring out, understanding what makes your Japanese sound natural is really challenging, and it's something that native speakers are not great at explaining because it falls in that category of things native speakers just know instinctively for the most part. They don't think about it a whole lot. It's the same thing with English. It's the same thing with any language. So, and he does a really good job of breaking down what that's about, what is natural and what is unnatural, which is a really nice thing. That's just something I really wish I would have had back in the 90s when I was really beginning to get the knack of it. Is this your first time here, DTN? So I'm going to just drop the link to this video again into chat, and then we're going to move on. I saw a video in my Rex from a guy I've never actually seen before. The channel is completely new to me. Bunsuke, it's called. And it's called, I've been studying Japanese for 20 years, here's what actually matters. I started studying Japanese in the late 1980s, and I'm also somebody who's been at it for a very long time. Well, welcome, good to see you. It's always nice to see new people here. Where are you joining us from? And so I'm just curious what somebody else who's been at it for a long time.
You've been studying Japanese for a while, you probably know how incredibly
what he has to say and whether I have anything to add to it. The channel is called Bunsuke. 聞いたことないチャンネルだけど、これはリンクです。Okay.
Frustrating it can be to learn this very difficult language. Hi, I'm Bunsuke, and I've been studying Japanese for over 20 years now. And in this video, I thought I'd take some time to share some of my takeaways for long-term studying in a sustainable way. And to celebrate the occasion, I want to do a giveaway at the end of this video. So stay tuned to find out how you can win your very own copy of one of my favorite dictionaries. This is going to be a long one, so...
Okay, I'm kind of curious what his favorite dictionary is. As a translator, looking for good dictionaries, being a critical appraiser of dictionaries is just part of the job. Because dictionaries are not all equal, and there are better dictionaries and there are worse dictionaries, and when you have to spend a lot of your time managing terminology and researching it, you really do get a feeling for which ones are good and which ones actually kind of suck. But I'm gonna skip. We're gonna. Oh no!
So before we
curious about his background, just because I've never heard of the channel, so we'll have a look at that.
The main section of today's video, I think it's useful to share something about my background. I formally started studying Japanese in 2005 when I entered university. But even from before that, I had many chances to visit Japan throughout my childhood and teen years.
Oh, interesting.
And by the age of 15, I knew I was completely hooked and wanted to study this language and culture more intensely. It wasn't so much the food or the popular culture that got me at that age. Certainly the food gets me now, as you can see from my chubby cheeks. But it was mostly the language that really fascinated me.
It is a fascinating language. That is, I mean, one of the things that really got me curious about it, one of the first things was I had a second cousin who spent a lot of time in Japan for work. And he would bring back little things and he would give them to me. And often they would come in packages, and those packages had kanji all over them. And I wanted to know what they said. And I would occasionally hear him talking in Japanese on the phone. I thought that was the coolest shit ever. And I wanted to be able to do that too. And then when I was like 10-ish, 9 or 10, I don't remember exactly. It should be easy enough to figure out, but it doesn't matter. There were Japanese kids in my class. Their families had been transferred from Chiba to work in the greater Cincinnati area. They didn't understand a word of English because they don't start taking it until roughly the same time we start taking foreign languages in the US as well. And so I started learning Japanese in order to hang out with them. And it just kind of kept going from there.
The sounds and the rhythms of the language, and of course the writing system that I really didn't understand.
And the other writing system, and the other writing system.
Vividly, that it really fascinated me. And I think it's safe to say that this fascination with Japan kind of got out of hand along the way, because I ended up with 1 undergraduate degree, 3 masters, and a PhD in modern Japanese literature.
Well, yeah, okay. Yeah, that seems, I would say that clearly the bug bit him.
Important to mention here, not so much to brag, but to keep in mind that I got to where I am today because I was able to fully invest all of my time and energy throughout the past 20 years into learning this very difficult language to a very high level.
I, on the other hand, almost entirely taught myself. I had some classes in high school, but overwhelmingly I just got a whole lot of books and a whole lot of videos. My host family, from when I spent time in Nagoya when I was 16, kept sending me VHS tapes of Japanese dubs of X-Files, and I watched the hell out of that. Yeah, and it certainly sounds like he knows what he's talking about, so I think this is going to be an interesting discussion.
Level. And not only that, but I was also funded for most of the entire process. So
God, that sounds nice.
Source of income for the past 20 years. So whatever you
actually being funded for these things.
You think of my level of Japanese based on videos on this channel, or
I'm also just kind of low-key trying to work out his accent.
Collaborations with other YouTubers that you might have seen. Just know that it is the result of many hours of dedication and immersion without many significant distractions along the way. Now, I know that there are a lot of online gurus out there who tell you that you should study in a specific way, or you're a complete failure, or that you should have achieved a certain level.
Or there's this one technique that nobody uses, and it's the only way to get fluent, which is so weird because nobody uses it. Lots of people are fluent. That sounds like the technique doesn't work as well as you're saying it does. But that is a very popular, very grifty format for videos. Yeah, very, very true what he's saying. But okay, so I'm going to jump ahead. His background sounds interesting.
Takeaway number 1. Find your community. I think one of the most important lessons in the past 20 years that I've learned is that community and the people you study with and you share this journey with are probably the thing that will make or break your experience.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, with languages, a big part of languages is other people. You know, you're learning a way of talking and understanding other people talking, and of course reading and writing as well. So having people to do that with when you're talking about what is in many ways a fundamentally relational activity definitely helps, especially if you've got the kind of people who are really encouraging and helpful. Yeah, I'm a very reading heavy learner as well.
Me, I found my community at university. I found a few of my peers and also some of my senpai who were very dedicated to learning this language in a very specific way.
I mean, my community was just like Japanese people I found along the way for the most part. Yeah, especially at university. A lot of the main people I hung out with at university in my first year were Japanese. So I actually spent a good deal of the time that I was at university just speaking Japanese, not because I had any classes in it, because I didn't, but because I had ended up surrounded with Japanese students, international students.
They're very nerdy about language, about linguistics, about literature, about history, and I was influenced by their passion for learning and their passion for language and culture. Now, from my early university days, there's specifically one friend, and he's watching this, he knows who he is.
One thing that might help with the auditory aspect of things, I mean, this is something, this won't be the first time you've heard me say it, I'm sure. But I find it's useful too, because I sometimes have this trouble as well in terms of hearing and processing, especially if I don't immediately know, if I don't know ahead of time what I'm about to be hearing, is to have the subtitles, the closed captioning, the CC subtitles on while you listen to it, because it really helps you link the words you know from reading with the way they sound. I find that's very important.
We've been friends for all of this time, basically since week one, the introduction week of university, and we're still friends today. He basically had a very similar journey to me. He's also a literature PhD and is now a full professor at a university, and we're still learning together, and we're about to even, write an academic paper together this summer. So this friend...
German, I think. I'm still kind of working... As I'm listening to him talk about this, and I think the point he's making is just really definitely very true. Surrounding yourself with people who are encouraging and helpful, it really makes a huge difference. If you've got that sort of a community, then whatever you're learning in the context of that community, I think you will probably end up getting better results. Because the encouragement helps, because occasionally there's frustration.
The friendship that we struck up all these years ago still translates into what we do today. But I still remember very vividly from those early days that studying together with somebody who was as passionate as me really helped me stay motivated long term. Of course, today things are very different because we live in the age of internet, and it's supposedly much easier to find a community that fits your learning goals. And
if you know where to look, it is. I mean, that is the real challenge. It's like, I mean, now now all these AI companies actually want to try to enclose all the knowledge again, so that we have to use their fucking bullshit garbage technology to access it, and pay them, of course. But really, knowing how to evaluate the quality of information and knowing where to find it and finding online communities and things like that, that is the real challenge, because there's so much stuff and you have to sort through it.
Interest. However, talking to my own students, some of them have definitely fallen prey to, for lack of a better word, some of the more toxic online communities.
Oh, yeah.
That people feel bad about being at a certain point in their language learning journey, or people putting each other down for not being able to read a kanji, or even having to do a kanji quiz before even being let into it.
Yeah, fuck all that. Absolutely fuck all that. Like, doing a kanji quiz, if you're trying to get people on similar levels sorted together, in order to help understand what people's needs might be, if it's that sort of a situation, that's one thing. But like having gatekeeping access to a community with a kanji test, that's bullshit. That is a hard pass. And I say that as somebody who would almost certainly pass whatever fucking test they gave me. I have won hell mode on Kanji de Go.
I want to say here that if you are part of such a community that makes you feel bad about studying or demotivated or nervous, it's okay to step away from that community.
In fact, it is highly encouraged to step away from that community, because none of that is going to help. That is all just going to make you, is going to associate learning this thing that you're trying to learn with failure and toxic bullshit. Yeah, I mean, that's a social dynamic to just give a miss.
Take your time to find a new community that works better.
Definitely.
Because
or create one. Sometimes you just pick up, sometimes it isn't a community that already exists. Sometimes it's just, you know, you run into individual people. Sometimes even in the, like these shitty communities that he's talking about, you'll run into other people who are saying, hey, what the fuck? This is not, why do we have to do things this way? And you just sort of pick them up and you get in touch with them, and suddenly you can just build a new community off of that.
Before really makes or breaks your journey. But I do realize that I was very lucky to stumble into the exact community that was right for me, right as I entered university at the age of 18. And I also realized that I'm lucky again today because I found a whole new community in all of you when I started this platform, first on Substack and now here also on YouTube. Thank you, by the way, also for sticking with me. I realized that I probably have...
Okay, I have to say, as I said, I'm not familiar with this guy at all. This is the first video I've seen. He just showed up in my recommendations, but I like his approach to things already. It seems like the kind of community, just judging from the way he talks about this anyway, that would be built around a guy like this would probably be a pretty good community. Okay, I'm going to skip ahead to takeaway number 2.
Well, takeaway number 2. Friction is progress. This might sound a bit wishy-washy in the beginning, but for me, language learning is an embodied experience based on...
Okay. Did you say friction is progress?
In my experience the past 20 years, I've always felt that learning a language is a very physical experience, and whenever I take away...
I mean, there are definitely physical aspects of it.
From the physical experience of learning the language, then information doesn't stick as well. So for instance, I always take notes on paper with a physical pen.
Yeah. I'm also a fan of the handwritten note.
By the way, I never keep my notes. I use the cheapest paper, use the cheapest pens available. For me, the note-taking itself is part of the process of...
Yes, I find this too. With things in general, if I'm actually... It doesn't even matter if I look at the notes again. The fact that I actually sat down and wrote down the thing gives me a level of recall of it that I don't necessarily otherwise have.
Memorization, but I never look back at my notes. The physical note-taking really serves to, you know, memorize more quickly and more efficiently, in my experience. I also use physical dictionaries. Not only do I just like the, you know, tactile experience of using a physical dictionary, but I also feel that going through the trouble of looking something up is kind of cumbersome, and so I don't really want to go through the process twice.
Yeah. Plus, I mean, one of the nice things about physical dictionaries, physical reference works, is the browsing aspect. Because you're turning pages, you're trying to find the thing, and you find other stuff on the way. And sometimes that other stuff is really worthwhile. Like, I mean, I have the Kanji Kente Kanji Jiten. The Kanji Kente people, the Kanji proficiency test people's own official kanji dictionary, and even I just like to browse through that thing. You know, sometimes I will be looking something up specifically, but I find things on the way that are even more interesting. So the incidental findings are actually really quite worthwhile, and you can learn a lot just from the stuff that you accidentally run across that just looks kind of interesting.
And so I think my brain feels forced to remember stuff so that I don't have to keep looking things up. But I do feel that using a physical dictionary helps me remember more efficiently, or at least kind of a combination of, you know, a dictionary on my phone or like a denshi jisho, one of those electronic dictionaries, in tandem with physical dictionary usage is a very efficient way to learn for me. But even if I do end up forgetting something, I realize that kind of...
Yeah, I mean, you just find interesting things. Sometimes you'll just see something and it's like, oh, you know, maybe you didn't make sense out of it the first time you saw it, and then you come back to it and it's like, oh, now I think I see where they're going with that. There's a lot to be said for physical books.
The forgetting is all...
I mean, especially these days with all these ways that it is... there is this push to rent out stuff that you... make you rent stuff that you used to own in the electronic world. And, like, Amazon now, you don't even get physical copies, like physical files of your Kindle books. You're accessing them essentially through streaming, which means that, for one thing, you can just be denied access to them very easily as a result of that, but it also means it can be changed at will, which, I mean, is all fucked up, but it's all stuff that you can't do with a physical book. Like, my physical copy of the Kojia, the publishers, Amazon, I bought it through Amazon. Amazon can't do shit to that. If I close my account, I still have my Kojia. If I if I stop paying for Audible or whatever, I still have the Kojia. I still have, all of my physical books, no matter what. Even if every data center gets shut down, those physical books are going to be there as long as the paper survives.
So part of the process. I think I've told this story before, but in the summer after my first year at university, I tried to decipher my first Japanese novel. I think it was by Murakami Haruki or by
one of my first Japanese authors too.
Murakami Ryu. Might have been Kagiri Naku Toumei ni Chikai Buru. I made a deal with myself. I would only take notes of a word or a kanji if that was the first time I saw that kanji or that word. And looking back at my notes, which I still did back then, I realized that I had written down the same word many, many times over, each time being convinced that that was the first time I saw that word. I realized at that point that, forgetting is just part of the cycle of
I mean, that is true.
Learning.
I had that experience too when I was reading The Firm in Chinese. Because the trouble I have with Chinese is I can actually understand Chinese quite well in writing because I know a lot of kanji. But I don't necessarily know how things are supposed to be pronounced. So I would make notes every time I would run across a hanzi that I did not know the proper Chinese reading for. And I also had the same policy in place that I would only write it down the first time I saw it. And the repetition that I ended up thinking I was seeing things for the first time a lot of times.
The word is so important, or the kanji is so important, it will come along again. In the end, what creates the progress is the friction between you and the material of, not knowing something, having to look something up in a physical way, taking physical notes, forgetting, and from there it's just a process of repetition and exposure. Now this method of learning, of course, comes in part because back when I started studying, there was no alternative to using a paper dictionary other than maybe an electronic dictionary, one of those things.
Exactly. It was the same thing. Ebooks did not exist. Search engines did not exist, actually, when I started. And so I have a whole library of physical books as a result of this. In Japanese, for Japanese learning.
Nowadays, people use all kinds of software or apps to learn. For instance, I hear my own students use software to turn subtitles from Netflix into Anki decks that are turned into flashcards that are spaciously repeated.
Spaciously repeated. Okay, I'm going to skip ahead now.
Okay, let's keep it moving. Takeaway number 3. The most difficult aspect of learning Japanese, for me at least, is not so much all the vocab, of which there is a lot, or all the kanji, of which there are many, but it is to be able to communicate in different registers of language.
Yeah, I mean, that is challenging, and also being able to just construct put together a sentence and have it sound natural, like an actual way that something an actual Japanese person would say and understands the way you meant it, is extremely challenging, because just the way expressions are formed is very different.
Let me explain what I mean by this. It's first of all knowing how things are expressed in a certain social situation.
Yeah.
And being able to switch between different registers. When you go to the hospital and you have to, tell what's wrong, or you have to fill out some forms, or you go to the tax office, or you go to the supermarket, all these different situations call for a different set of vocabulary, a different set of phrasing. And so this is probably why a beginner or early intermediate student, people will say, oh, grammatically it's perfect, but it's just not how we say it. So.
Yeah, I mean, or sometimes you will have something that seems grammatically just right, except it just doesn't make any sense. It is possible to, because it's just not the way anyone says anything. I would agree with him that it's really is the most challenging thing, because you can't really take a whole lot of assumptions with you from English or a lot of European languages, because what gets implied is different, what is said explicitly is different. There are a lot of phrases that act as sort of netcats, like Swiss Army knives, that mean a million things, like onegai shimasu, which can mean just a staggering number of different things in different contexts.
And this how we say it, the phrasing, the colloquialisms of different social situations that call for different registers of language, getting the exposure that you need to get familiar with all of these scenes and situations over time, that is, I think, the biggest challenge in Japanese. And just the other day, one of my students talked about this, and he's like, well, I can look up all the kanji, look up all the words, but I'm still not really sure what it says. There's kind of something in between. It's like a...
I mean, and the other way too, where you look up, it can go where you looked up all the words, and the dictionary gave you the words, and you wrote them in more or less the order that makes sense grammatically, and then you show this to a Japanese person, like, did I write this right? And they're like, they look at it, and they're like, okay, so you're gonna have to help me out here. What is this supposed to mean? And it's like, oh fuck, like, that is, you have to push through that. That is a moment of maximum frustration. You've been doing Japanese for 8 years. You understand it quite well. You sit down and you try to just write a couple of sentences about a thing, and you think that they make perfect sense. You had to look up some words, sure, but they just make sense to you, and you show these things to an actual Japanese person, and they don't understand what you're trying to say. And that is a moment where either you have to just kind of recommit to understanding why this is not the way, what the difference is between what you just wrote down with great effort and no small amount of pride is, in fact, what the difference between that and what an actual Japanese person would say in order to communicate that exact same meaning is a huge challenge and takes years of its own.
In between me and the language, and I think it's this aspect where you're good enough to look up everything and understand most things, but then there's still kind of this distance between you and the language, and I think closing the gap is kind of the biggest challenge for anybody who is intermediate and above. So I guess what I'm trying to say is when you're assessing kind of a long-term study plan, make sure that it's not only about cramming vocab, cramming kanji, but it's about sentence structure, learning phrasing,
and also I would also say not sentence structure in the abstract. This is where grammar study really breaks down, because you can actually have the word order more or less right, but you just are not saying, but you're not breaking it down on the level of how these expressions are actually formed and things like that. And the only way you're really going to get that is to expose yourself to a lot of natural Japanese. One of the things that was a huge help for me is in the Power Japanese series from Tuttle Publishing, which I highly recommend. You would have a lot of natural Japanese sentences, and with good idiomatic English translations, with also a word-for-word breakdown in the middle. And you can start to say, oh, so this is how you would actually say that. This is what, this is the way these sorts of phrases are formed and stuff like that. You have to have a sufficient sample of how Japanese is supposed to sound in order to be able to start generating it in a way that makes sense to native speakers and feels like the way that they would talk.
And focusing on how things are said in certain situations. Okay, takeaway number 4. Perfection does not exist. Now when we're...
good point.
Very serious about our language learning journey, we want to become as good as we possibly can.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I would say perfectionism has its places, if you understand that perfection doesn't exist. And there's a contradiction there. There's a certain tension in those two things. And the way where I go with that is perfection doesn't exist, and you may never actually get to the level, the highest possible level in the thing that you're doing, whatever it is. Whether, it doesn't have to be learning languages, it could be playing chess or whatever. But you can still say, I'm, as set as a goal to try to get there, because even if, as is most likely, you don't get anywhere near the maximum level that you could possibly get to, you're going to have done a lot anyway. You will have actually achieved quite a bit anyway. So it can be useful in that sense.
Of course, our image of the best that you possibly can be is the ideal image of the native speaker. So the closer to native speaker that you can get, the better.
Yeah.
And I feel that...
native speaker is a moving target, because different native speakers have very different ways of speaking. And different levels of knowledge, different amounts of vocabulary. There are native speakers in every language that have very small vocabularies and aren't particularly articulate. There are also native speakers who are, amazing public speakers and can throw a million literary references into things. And so there's a range. And it's always changing, too. So, in that sense, actually, having... you have to have a more detailed description of what you're going for in that sense. Because you can sound like an inarticulate native speaker relatively easily, for example.
But
is that what you're going for?
I do feel that lately in the kind of online language learning community, this has taken a kind of an unconstructive turn, if you will. I've noticed that people are very concerned these days about their pitch accent. Everybody reads perfect pitch, even though they might still be a beginner or like an early intermediate. People are worried about getting very good JLPT scores for N1 or, getting N1.
Yeah, standardized tests are overrated. If you need them for work purposes or something like that, then by all means do it. But don't think that it actually matters all that much. It mostly is proof of your test-taking skills.
As quickly as possible. There's a lot of videos out there of people, starting and getting N1 within 6 months. I've also heard...
Yeah, and if you're getting N1 within 6 months, I mean, you're not starting from zero. If you are starting from zero, and you can get an N1 on the Japanese language proficiency test within 6 months, that just discredits the Japanese language proficiency test. Because there's no way that, there are native speakers. There are lots of videos. They will. You can look up native speaker takes JLPT N1 and fails, right? So if native speakers can fail the JLPT N1, and a non-native speaker can start from zero and pass it in 6 months, that does not speak highly of the test, actually.
This is kind of near and dear to my heart because my specialization is Japanese literature, but I've heard people say that your Japanese needs to be perfect before you read your first novel.
Oh, fuck off! No, that's bullshit. Yeah, who the hell says that? I mean, let me just be clear. I'm not expressing disbelief that I don't think it's implausible at all. I think probably there are people who say that, but no. First of all, your Japanese is not going to be perfect, whatever that is, unless you're already doing that kind of reading. Because grammar and all this natural phrase forming and all that sort of stuff that we've been talking about, a lot of that comes from reading. In fact, there are studies that back this up. The people who have the most refined grammar in their target language tend to be people who do a lot of pleasure reading in their target language. Now, to be clear, if you try to read a Japanese novel before you have a pretty significant level of knowledge of how to read and write Japanese, that will be a frustrating experience. I know. I did it. I got a copy of Sanshiro from my Japanese teacher in high school. I was definitely nowhere near the level to be able to read Sanshiro, one of Natsume Soseki's best known books. But I actually still haven't read Sanshiro. I read Wagahai wa Neko de Aru last year, and that's the only Natsume Soseki I've actually finished. Because the thing is, I have to say, I find a lot of his books boring and depressing. Like Wagahai wa Neko de Aru, the book about the cat, is interesting. There are lots of wry observations about sort of about humans in general and the Japanese bourgeoisie at the turn of the century in particular that are quite entertaining. And then the cat just fucking dies, just falls into a vat of beer and it just dies, and that's the end of the book. Just apropos of nothing. So, and it's like, I don't know. I'm going to have a little bit of a rest before I come back to this author. But yeah, you're not going to get that. You're not going to get any kind of perfect Japanese unless you're reading novels. So I would say the minute you're actually at a point where you can understand what's written there, do it. I mean, and these days it's so much easier. Like when I was doing, I had like a physical copy of Sanshiro. I still have it someplace. And the thing about a physical copy that is definitely inferior to an ebook in Japanese is that you cannot just put your finger on kanji and get the reading. You can do that with Japanese Kindle books if you get the Japanese dictionary. And you can actually get the actual, the reading of the kanji that you're not sure about. And a definition. So, definitely a lower barrier to entry there than there was when I was starting out. Yeah, but... yeah, I mean, the only standard in terms of what level is when you can actually do it without being frustrated and understand a good deal of what you're reading. Other than that, like, start whatever you want.
Your first experience of the novel should be this immaculate experience. So let me tell you now that is not very realistic.
Yeah, that's bullshit.
That kind of rhetoric makes you very nervous, then it's okay to kind of...
Yeah, I mean, it's a fucking book. It does not have bouncers. Just pick it up, read it. If you find it frustrating and you don't understand anything, put it down. Read something else. There's probably some, if you're at the point where you're even thinking of trying to read a Japanese novel, then you can clearly read somewhat. So there's probably other stuff you can find that you can read, and do that, and then come back to it. And but don't think that you have to like prove your worthiness. I mean, whatever the hell that even is.
Of course, I also, at the beginning of all of this, wanted to become as native as I possibly could. But what I realized after 20 years of language learning is that, on the one hand, I'll probably never be as good as the average 5-year-old Japanese child. And on the other hand, I'm much, much better at Japanese and much more knowledgeable about Japanese than the average native speaker, because I have such specialized knowledge.
Yeah, I mean, and again, this is where we get into the fact that there are just different native speakers. Yeah, you might actually have a public speaking ability in your target language that is better than a lot of native speakers, because public speaking is a specific skill. Or an ability to talk about specific things that is far superior to most native speakers, because they don't know about the thing that you know about. And so these are all very much fluid concepts and moving targets. And I am going to take a little bio break at this point. I will be back in just a few minutes. Implicit connotations. Well, I'm Elise from the CROWDFUNDED Translation Project, and wanted to just tell you a little bit about what that project is and give you some updates about what I've been doing with your support. The Inessa Armand project. After finishing Kalantai's social basis of the female question, I put out a call for suggestions for the next project. One of those suggestions that I received was to translate the essays and letters of Inessa Armand, Kalantai's predecessor at the Bolshevik Women's section. Suppressed by Stalin and never translated into English, Armand's writings enrich our understanding of the Bolshevik women's movement in the run-up to the October Revolution and the early days of revolutionary Russia. With your support, I have been able to translate all of her extant essays and am currently raising the last $1,950 to cover the cost of translating the remainder of her extant works, which at this point is just her correspondence. If you would like to support the project, all contributions are beautiful. You'll find links in the description. The Punto Final project is a project that is really just at its inception. Punto Final, for those unfamiliar with it, i.e. likely most of the people watching this right now, was a magazine edited by Manuel Caviese Donoso that ran from 1965 to the eve of the 1973 CIA-backed coup in Chile, and then from 1989 to 2018, publishing a grand total of 894 issues. In addition to being a platform for theoretical and ideological debate, they were also a source of excellent political journalism. Their real-time analysis of political developments in Chile, the rise of the Unidad Popular, the looming coup, and the limits of electoralism has aged extremely well, and is well worth reading for anyone interested in the period. The Chilean left is sort of in a media bubble, and the Anglosphere left really doesn't do a great job of breaking that bubble and really building connections there. So the discussion that you hear in English about Chile, even in supposed left outlets, such as Jargon, often has little or nothing to do with the state of discussion amongst comrades in Chile. So this is part of my attempts to contribute to sort of breaking down that bubble and fostering some understanding of the thought amongst revolutionaries in Chile, both historically and currently. I have so far translated 7 articles, including a long read on electoralism versus armed struggle called Chile, the Ballot or the Bullet by Punto Final editor Manuel Caviese, and currently am working on various pieces of political analysis from the eve of the electoral campaign that would bring Salvador Allende to power, or at least to government. These include discussions of electoral versus revolutionary strategy and how and to what extent these things can coexist, discussions of US imperialist interference in Chilean politics, One of the challenges of this project, since its inception, has been getting the word out. The billionaire-controlled black box algorithms that dominate our lives don't like small creators or small projects. Nor are they particularly keen on ideological viewpoints that are inconsistent with the whims of billionaires. What's more, they positively detest anyone who isn't paying for reach. And then they turn around and make it ever harder to do even that in a useful way. The result of all this is that there are definitely considerably more people who would be interested in this project than actually see any of my posts about it. And that's why I have a small favor to ask you. Tell your friends about the crowdfunded translation project. Share the completed translations, link the Patreon and the Facebook pages. All those links are in the description. Let people know that this project exists and what it's all about. Let them know that I want to hear their ideas for future crowdfunded translation projects at crowdfunded_translations@elisehendrick.com. And if you've got any ideas, I'd love to hear them. Ultimately, the crowdfunded translation project is for us all. The whole idea is to translate texts that have fallen through the cracks by making it economically viable for a professional translator, i.e. me, to work on them and to make the results freely available to everyone. I think that a lot of great things are coming out of the project, and even more can result from it yet. But it all depends on making the project visible to the people who might benefit from it and consider supporting it. Thank you for watching for this length of time. I hope you found it interesting, and I hope that it will encourage you to get in touch with the crowdfunded translation project, look at our translations, to get in touch with, to get involved with the crowdfunded translation project. Make suggestions, read the translations, Let people know that this exists. This could be a great resource, but it's been a real fucker trying to get the word out about it. So thank you very much. Even watching this and commenting and leaving a like and sharing it on your platforms, or even to yourself in an email apparently, will help increase the visibility of this video and thus of this project. Thanks so much, and see you on the next stream. Thank you very much. Even watching this and commenting and leaving a like and sharing it on your platforms, or even to yourself in an email apparently, will help increase the visibility of this video and thus of this project. Thanks so much, and see you on the next stream. Hey, implicit connotation. And I'm back. And on the subject of Japanese novels, one other thing that just occurred to me to mention, which is the first novels I ever read in Japanese were not actually Japanese novels. I actually kind of worked up to that. The first novels I ever read in Japanese were Japanese translations of English novels that I knew well and liked. And eventually I started reading stuff that was written in Japanese in the original. That was sort of a useful bridge, and it might be for somebody who's learning Japanese other than me. But I just wanted to mention that particular thing, since it occurred to me.
In a similar way, if you ask me about my own native language, Dutch.
Oh, okay. I wasn't too far off.
A lot of trouble answering questions about that because I just speak it as a native speaker,
Yeah.
and not through a process of second language acquisition. So the approach is very different. So what this has taught me is that there's no such thing as perfection. Not even native speakers are perfect, and not all native speakers are created equal. And when it comes to pitch accent, I do feel that it's like an interesting aspect of Japanese language learning. But I think that if you're like a beginner or kind of lower intermediate learner, then having perfect pitch should be lower on your list of priorities among...
I would say what's useful and doesn't get discussed as much in the sort of pitch accent centric space is learning to recognize it. Because the thing is, I mean, I never heard of the term pitch accent when I was really doing my formative Japanese learning. I wasn't aware that that was the thing that I was hearing. I now know that that's what I was hearing. I just noticed that certain syllables stood out in a certain way more than others. And if I would say, without even necessarily trying to get into recognizing the different ways, the different types of pitch accent, just listen to the way people are saying things and try to recognize those emphasis patterns. And the more you do that, the more you will tend to speak with good pitch accent.
All of the aspects that you still have to learn. So if it's something that just interests you and you want to kind of learn more about it, by all means, go for it. But if it's something that has been whispered in your ear that you should perfect before even opening your mouth in Japanese public, please let that go immediately.
There are enough barriers to... I don't know why there are some people who feel a need to create more barriers to entry for Japanese learners. Japanese is enough of a barrier to entry. I mean, just look at it. It's already... You find other things to do. Don't come up with these sorts of things. You don't need to artificially make it more challenging than it is. We should be encouraging people. And if their pitch accent isn't great to start out with, I mean, that takes time. And one of the ways that they're going to really improve on it is if they do more speaking and listening in Japanese. Especially more listening, I would say, especially in the early stages, but and people who are coming up with any kind of artificial thing, like your Japanese has to be perfect before you do this or that, and it's like, no, fuck off.
Not true at all, and if you don't have perfect pitch, that doesn't mean that you can't make Japanese friends. In a similar way, this idea of perfecting your Japanese before you start reading a novel in Japanese, I think is absolutely ridiculous. One of my old professors here in Japan is one of the foremost scholars when it comes to Natsume Soseki, but he used to tell me that he rereads Soseki's novels every single year because every time he reads them, he gets something new out of them.
Yeah, I mean, not necessarily saying this about Soseki. As I said, my own experience with Soseki's novels is I've read one of them, I found it depressing, and I haven't really gone back. Which should not discourage anyone else. Like, for one thing, again, I've only read the one. But, and actually, the book itself, I'm glad I read it. It was good. It was very interesting. He has a certain wry way of thinking of and talking about Japanese culture in a major transitional period. This is true. But this is true. Like, you go back and you read. If you find things that are good enough that you can reread them, you will find new things each time you do it, and there's value in that.
So think about this. Even like not just any native speaker, but one of the foremost scholars in the field gets something new out of rereading these novels every single time. You cannot get perfect from not doing a thing. You cannot become fluent in reading Natsume Soseki by postponing your interaction with Natsume Soseki.
Exactly. Whatever definition somebody has of having perfect Japanese, leaving aside that's nonsense. But whatever standard you're applying there, you will not be at as good a level as you could be if you're not just, jumping in and reading it and finding the right thing for you to read at a particular moment. Because it might in fact not be the novels of Natsume Soseki, which are challenging in a lot of ways, not least because they were written in the late 19th, early 20th century, so there are a lot of words for things that just people don't use anymore. So, I mean, that is something I've been, taking occasional stabs at Genji Monogatari. Not the original, the Gendaiyaku, the modern Japanese translation that's been done. And even that's challenging because it's full of medieval Japanese concepts that and words that nobody uses anymore. All sorts of Ritsuryo Jidai stuff. And if you don't know about the way things worked in the Ritsuryo Jidai, then you're going to have a lot of trouble understanding things, no matter how good your Japanese is. In fact, I mean, one of the things that's really heartening is that if you look up Genji Monogatari on YouTube, it's full of explainers for Japanese native speakers who also are having trouble understanding even the modern translation of it. Because it is hard, actually. It's 1,000 years old. It's full of stuff that nobody has any reason to know now, except for medieval scholars.
Even if you are very good at, say, reading Mori Ogai, who is one of Soseki's most famous contemporaries, even if you're very good at reading him, that's no guarantee that you're very good at reading Soseki.
Yeah.
Because the styles are so different. Language back then was very experimental still. So I guess what I'm trying to say...
I would have to say language in Japan is just always experimental. I mean, to some extent, language in general is experimental. Constantly trying out new things. But, yeah, this was the period when the Western language, Western loanwords started to really come into Japanese in a big way for the first time. And it's full of things like, you have to know what a haikara is. No, this is not a word that anybody uses anymore, really, except in period movies and things, jidaigeki. But in Natsume Souseki's Japan, haikara was a whole thing. It's from the English word high collar, referring to the kinds of suits that men would wear in the early 20th century in Western Europe. With the high, stiff, extremely starched collar and the curved corners rather than sharp ones. And what that referred to is like westernized Japanese bourgeoisie. And there's all sorts of this sort of turn of the century slang in Natsume Souseki's work. And so there's all sorts of stuff in there that even if you speak really good, 21st century Japanese and read it really well as well, it's going to be full of concepts that you will not be necessarily all that familiar with because they're just gone. Nobody uses them anymore. Either they describe a technology that nobody uses anymore, or they describe a concept that we have different words for now.
Is that because perfection doesn't exist, the best thing you can do is jump into something that really interests you.
Yeah,
if you really want to read older novels, just jump in. It feels awkward at the beginning because you don't know much about it, but not being perfect before you start is kind of the point.
Yeah.
Even if you're not perfect in the beginning, which you won't be, your mind can adjust.
Yeah, and you will get better. Being exposed to well-written Japanese is in itself a way that you're going to improve. You're going to learn all sorts of things, including just how a story is narrated in Japanese. Because Japanese uses different narrative techniques because the language works differently in all sorts of ways. Okay, I'm going to skip ahead to number 5 now.
Takeaway number 5. Let's be honest.
He chapterized these really well because that each time I'm cutting ahead, he's saying take away the number of the next takeaway. I appreciate that. I really should do more of that, to be honest.
Most of language learning absolutely sucks. And that's because there's so much disappointment when it comes to language learning. It's a long, arduous process.
See, I don't know that... I think... Okay, there are bits that are frustrating and disappointing. Just because you're doing something new that you're not good at yet. I don't think it has to suck. I think that really depends very much on the sort of approach that you're using, the sort of materials you're working with, and the sort of people you're doing it around. Because, there is a certain amount of inherent frustration with just learning a new thing in general. But it doesn't have to suck if you're around, encouraging, helpful people who also know enough more about this than you that they can help you get through these bits that you're having difficulty with.
There's only a few moments of light at the end of the tunnel, and you kind of desperately cling on to these moments only to be disappointed again the next moment. And there were so many moments along the way where I was kind of uplifted and made to think like, I can finally do it. I'm here. I finally arrived at the end point of my...
There is no end point. It is a good thing to just note. There is not going to be a point where you know everything there is to know about any language.
Language learning journey.
There's just too much. There's a huge amount of stuff. Nobody does.
Much trouble, only to be confronted with a different situation that completely threw me off again. My entire language learning journey has basically been a wave of this kind. It's like a big waveform if you make a graph out of it. But it is kind of that waveform that if expanded over a longer period of time, you do see kind of go up. And so it's not weird.
Okay, I had never actually seen this guy's channel before, but I like his approach to things. Definitely somebody worth checking out. I'm going to move on to something else, though. I'm going to just drop the link in chat again. For anyone who didn't get it in the first place. Let's see what else we can look at. Wrong window. Okay. 日本人が気づいていない日本語の難しさ. Well, we've been on sort of a Japanese kick. So, I thought, oh, why don't we have a look at, this is from Nick Channel. 日本人が気づいていない日本語の難しさ. The things about Japanese that are hard that Japanese people don't even notice. You could translate that as... Actually, hang on. I meant to subscribe to Bunsuke.
Confronted with a different situation that completely threw me off again. My entire language learning journey has basically been a way.
Okay, I'm gonna drop the link in chat for anyone who's curious about the channel. Okay. 日本人が気づいていない日本語の難しさ. ニックチャンネル
Hello everybody! ニックチャンネルのニックことニコラス・ドアスです。今回もよろしくお願いいたします。
まずは字幕の有無を確認しましょう。Desactivado japonés generado automáticamente. じゃあ英語の字幕はないようですね。
します。以前ですね、日本語って世界一難しい言葉なのか、そんなのデタラメだみたいな動画を、出したことがあるんですけれども、今回
Okay.
は逆に日本語で難しいよっていうのを僕が日本人の皆さんに教えさせていただきます。ということで題して日本人が気づかない日本語の難しさ5選です。これからリストアップする5つっていうのは
Okay. It's going to be a top 5 things that are really hard about Japanese that Japanese people don't realize.
外国人にとってもう日本語はちょっと諦めたってなるようなポイントの勢いで難しいものを紹介していきたいと思っているんですが、日本人の皆さんは言われたら確かに難しいかもしれないですけど、こなせちゃっているご自身に大きな拍手を送りながら聞いててください。ということで1つ目なんですけど、特別読みの地獄でございます。
特別読みの地獄. Okay. This is the hell of special readings. Because if you read one thing that is, we were just talking about Japanese novels and stuff. One thing that's really challenging about Japanese literature is that people get creative with how you're supposed to read certain kanji and stuff like that. I mean, in addition to the fact that there are all sorts of just unusual readings. Like, for example, I mean, the way kanji are read in people's names has very little relationship with how they are read in basically any other context. You have like things like masa for the kanji that normally you would read as sei, shou, or tadashi, and all this sort of thing, and in place names and all sorts of stuff. Yeah, so 特別読みの
ちょっと皆さんにとある文章を ちょっと読んでいただきたいですね。ではまずの文章どうぞこちら。
3月1日は日曜日で祝日、晴れの日でした。そうですね。だって、その日、日、実という感じの読み方は、出るごとに違うわけなんですよ。Okay, for anyone who's not following this who's not following this in Japanese. So this sentence here, which means the 1st of March is a Sunday and a holiday, and was had clear, and the skies were clear, and the character for day or sun shows up 5 times, and each time it appears it is read differently. We have the first time 1日, because the word for this looks like, if you don't you could, if you see this, sometimes it's pronounced 1日. You see a 1 and nichi next to it. It can often be 1日, just referring to a 1-day period or a single day. But then as the first of the month, it is 1日. Okay, so 1日, then it becomes nichi at the top of nichiyoubi, and then it becomes bi, and then it becomes jitsu, and then it becomes hi. Yeah, like 5 times in one very normal, very typical sentence. 5 different readings. There is a rakugoka, a hanashika, a guy who does like the traditional Japanese equivalent of stand-up comedy, who has a whole thing on how hard Japanese is, and this is also one of the things that he mentions.
皆さんもきっとこっちは難なくすんなり何とも考えずに、読めたんじゃないかなと思います。
いや、別に難しい文章、別に何文なんかじゃないんですよね。難読とも言えないんですね。日本語的には。だって、これは全部、小学生の、読める漢字ばっかしですね。3月1日、日曜日、祝日。祝日は、でも、中学校かしら。でも、その一方では、読み方、日の読み方は、1日、日、日、実、日、5回現れて、5回も読み方が違うことになってしまいます。こんな。
中にはもしかしたら何が難しいのかっていうところは気づいたっていう人もいるかもしれないですけど、多くの方は今大きなハテナマークで来てるんじゃないかなとは思います。実を言うとこの文章は外国人にとって地獄の一文と呼ばれております。僕が一回読み上げてみます。3月1日は日曜日で祝日、晴れの日でした。お分かりいただけましたか？この文というのは日、日の漢字が全部読み方違うんです。
3
月1日は日曜日。
だってその1日を1日と書くと、何がつい、何が立ちか、何がついで何が立ちかというのはちょっと今ちょっと戸惑ってますね。考えてみたことは、まあ、一度もありませんね。今までその1日の1日の日という字は立ちなのか、
イタチ、タチですよね。の、いや、違います。それとも、なんか、ユニットとして、総合的な読みなのかしら。考えたことはないけど、これは、脳の故障を起こしかねないんですよ、これ。
で、祝日、晴れの日でしたです。つまりこの文の中には1、2、3、4、5回ともに、まあ、日という、漢字は出てくるんですけども、それぞれ全部読み方が違うという。この文章に関しては、パッと見、こういう文章ありそうだなっていうぐらいに、ナチュラルに、何の問題もなく読めるんですけど、外国人からしたら、
いや、
ちょっと待ってよみたいな。1日って結構難点だと思うんですよね。日本人の
You see, one of the things you have to get used to in Japanese is that there are just different words for certain things, like counting the days. You don't just say, we don't, in most languages that I'm aware of, you just have numbers. The 5th, the 6th, the 7th, the 1st, the 31st, whatever. In Japanese, there's a whole thing where you have 1日、2日、3日、4日. So the Nietzsche, you don't have it in this particular sentence. He could have had 6 readings because that Nietzsche also becomes ka when you're counting days of the month. And
でも、ただ1日ってさ、1日のことであって1ヶ月の1日のことではないみたいな、いろいろとね、その読み方が違ってしまうと意味というかニュアンスまで変わってしまうので、ね、小学校低学年で習うこの日日っていう漢字なのにバラとかみたいな難しい漢字よりもある意味難しいということになります。
だってバラは私書けないんですね。でも見たら読み方わかりますよ。考えずに見た目でバラですね。ちゃんとその字を分析したことは一度もありません。でも慣れています。それ見慣れていますよ。そのバラというコンビネーションでもだから考えることなく別に分析力を消費することなくバラと読んでしまいますよね。でもその火の字は一番簡単な漢字の一つと言っても過言ではありませんね。低学年で習う漢字の一つだからね。でもこんな難しさがあります。Yeah, I mean, what he's saying here is like, this is a kanji that you learn in your first year of school in Japan. It is considered one of the easiest ones. It's one of the most basic ones. And there are this many different ways to read it.
2つ目の文章
In a very normal sentence.
と思うんですけど、これはもう長いんで皆さん僕が読み上げながら皆さん一緒に見てください。どうぞ。生け花を
生け花を生きがいにしたおえぬきの
生きがいにした生え抜きの生娘、涼しをなりわいに生計立てた生い立ちは生半可ではなかったあいにく生前は生まれてこの方生涯通して生粋の産だったちょっと何言ってるかよくわかんない文章なんですけど、
生け花を生きがいにした生え抜きの生娘。変なこんな変な
見ていただいてきっと分かっていただいた通り、生っていう漢字ですね、生という漢字がですね、全て読み方が違うというものになりますね。池、これは単純にね、送り仮名が省略されている言葉とも
騎士の産、
言えるの
なりわい、整形、生娘、
頭なのかもしれないですけど、生け花ですね。
おいた
生
ち。
きがいにした生え抜き、
あ、生娘だな。じゃなく、生娘。生娘。
何かが生えるっていうことを、
生ビールと
日本語でもこの漢字を使ったり、生娘ですね。
Yeah, I mean, there are a ridiculous number of different readings for se, sho, ikiru, this kanji that is the first of each in each line here. Many of them actually rather rare. Like you don't see nariwai very often. You can go a fair distance in Japanese without actually noticing many of these, like kisui. 見たことねえよ。
涼しなりはさすがに特別読みと言えるかなとは思うんですけども、生計を立てるともよく使う言葉ですね。生い立ち、それも僕がこの生い立ちという言葉を覚えたのはウィキペディアで覚えたんですけども、芸能人のウィキペディアに行くと生い立ちって結構出てくるんで生半可、中途半端って僕だったら言っちゃうんですけど、こういう言い方もあるという。
Okay, I'm going to shift gears. Let's see what else we've got here. I'm gonna just check out an Evil Dia thing. Yeah, Stuart analyzes Pablo's tie. How good is he? Now, I'm also doing ALG tie, so I'm curious about this.
What's up, grinders? Welcome back to the channel. Now, in this video right here, how is Pablo using ALG to learn Chinese? I did a random shout out to another YouTuber and I said, hey, Stuart, this is the YouTuber in question, how good is his Thai? Because obviously he learned Thai via ALG, the automatic language growth method, and I was kind of curious to know because, well...
I'm not familiar with any of these people, though I have seen both of these videos in my recommendations.
You know, he's a big influencer in the space for ALG, and well, Stuart, my man, dropped a video 22 hours ago, and look at that goddamn thumbnail, bro. I look like the type of person who's looking down into the well saying, it puts the...
Oh. Fucking hell.
Lotion on the skin. So we're going to watch this and see how good his Thai actually is. It's 33 minutes long. This is going to be a long one. I hope you guys are ready for some deep linguistic analysis.
Does ALG really work when it comes to language learning? Now, for those of you who don't know ALG, this is the automatic language growth system.
Yeah, and of course, when the first thing that you have to do when you answer that question is define what exactly you mean by language learning, but okay.
It was developed by a linguist. He was actually originally a physicist, Marvin Brown.
If any of you are watching this and curious why I would care about this method and why I care about Pablo and stuff, just I have an entire series on my channel where I'm learning Spanish using this method, and the service I'm using, Dreaming Spanish, was actually I guess founded, invented, set up by Pablo. Like, he was the guy who set it up. So, and he credits his Thai abilities to ALG, and that's why he pushes ALG. So I am curious to see where his Thai is at, because...
Of course, one of the things about these sorts of audits is you can see a lot of things, but you can't actually see what's going on in the person's head. And one of the key things, people comprehend considerably more than they can say a lot of the time. I mean, that's a fairly normal thing. It doesn't even matter what language you're talking about, or whether it's their native language or a language that they have learned since. So you can get a sense of how well somebody is speaking in the language, but it doesn't necessarily tell you how much they're comprehending.
There is not many examples. In fact, there's hardly any I'm aware of people who have learnt a language purely by ALG. not using any type of traditional method, as in not using flashcards, not using grammar books. They just did the full pure ALG approach. So this is going to be interesting to see, you know, how good his accent is, how good his language is overall, you know, grammar, word selection, etc.
So, Marvin Brown, I've been hugely inspired by Marvin Brown, his PhD thesis on
Marvin Brown's the guy who invented ALG.
Thai linguistics, TAI, and his book From Ancient Thai to Modern Dialects. That changed the way that I thought about language and sound and phonology. And
Interesting.
even they're cracking Thai fundamentals. You will see heavily inspired by Marvin Brown. If you don't have a copy and you're learning Thai, get one. Click on the link below. Otherwise, you can order it via Amazon if you're not in Thailand. But that's not what we're here today for. So let me just turn that off. So Marvin Brown developed this ALG, automatic language growth system, in Thailand.
Wait, okay. He's speeding him up, and I'm speeding him up. So this is like being double accelerated. So we're gonna take him down a few notches here.
No matter how he tried, if he learnt the formal ways, and he'd learnt through the military, from what I understand, and different formal ways, also trained linguistically, he couldn't help but analyze language, and he couldn't help but notice that his language never really sounded natural. And so with testing and trying different things back and forth, in 1984 he came up with this system, launched with the AUA Learning Institute, where they would do this ALG, automatic learning growth.
I'm going to skip ahead a little bit here. Okay, here we go. Because we've heard the story of ALG a few times on this channel already, and
in learning Spanish, he's up to 1,050 hours now through a site called Dreaming Spanish. And that site was brought about by, well, founded by Pablo, who you see here. Now, Pablo is an amazing guy.
Oh, okay. Oh, that Pablo.
We have a lot of common friends. He speaks fluent Thai, speaks Japanese, and Evil Deer made a call out to me.
Thai is the only one where I know he actually learnt to like a fluent level. So I'm actually kind of curious, how good is his Thai? In fact, Stuart, because I've been doing a lot of reacts with Stuart recently. If you guys don't know him, let me pull up his YouTube channel. Here he is. Here's Stuart's channel. Now, I actually understand that Stuart is a fluent Thai speaker, and he does breakdowns of people's abilities. So, Stuart, if you're watching this video, do a breakdown of Pablo's Thai. Let us know if you can hear anything strange about it. If it's just fucking flawless, let us know, because I would love to know what level he got to in Thai, because he actually went to the original ALG school.
And so today, in response to a call out made by Evil Deer,
I did not actually realize that about the guy who founded Dreaming Spanish. That's actually kind of it's interesting when you have that sort of a lineage. Wow, that spectral analyzer graphic looks like the flames of hell.
for the sake of truly evaluating the system, because people have been saying things, this and that, about Evil Deer's progress or lack thereof, lack of ability to speak at all, even though he's just past that 1,000 hour threshold in Spanish.
It is very interesting, the comments I get. I get like lots of encouraging comments, people saying, wow, I'm doing really good, I'm doing...
Yeah, and I will say, like, in terms of his comprehension, I would say he seems to be doing reasonably well. The fact that, yeah, I mean, his speech is clunky, but he's only just starting out at it, that's kind of how... So I would say, actually, yeah, if I were him, I'd be happy with my progress, is what I'm saying.
Better than them, and then there'll be those comments all like, oh my god, you're so bad, I was way ahead of you at this point. And it's like, I always go into this type of thing of, okay, those comments don't really mean too much unless I know your background and how you approach this, like... Unless you did exactly what I do, I can't really do a comparison whether I am ahead or whether I am behind.
And people wanting to see, okay, so...
Well, and I mean, there are other things about that, too, because background matters. Like, if you're coming at Spanish and you come from a background of already being fluent in a Romance language, that's going to make a difference. You're going to find Spanish easier to a certain extent. There's certain aspects of the language that are going to be easier for you to get used to. You know, if you're used to languages with certain kinds of structures, it's going to be easier for you to advance in a language that also uses those structures. Like I mentioned this in my most recent Thai ALG diary video, because I was noticing that with myself and Thai, that I find actually I was in some respects progressing faster than you would technically expect, and I think that is entirely down to the fact that the structures of Thai that I have encountered thus far are not strictly new to me, even though Thai itself is, because it's mostly things that I'm familiar with from other languages. And so, because of that, I can kind of focus on words.
Somebody who really speaks fluently, who has learnt with the ALG method sound. Does it live up to expectations? I think that Pablo is doing great stuff. A lot of people use his site, they love his site, and it's working for them. I just want to evaluate this against his Thai language, because people have been saying, okay, so how's Pablo's Thai? This is one specimen that we can say, well, from what we understand, he's learnt through ALG. So let's see, has it worked? So again today, I've got it up here in Audition with a spectrograph. And you see these colors down here, the more yellow it is, these are these vocal folds vibrating, so your voice box vibrating. The more
okay, I was wondering what, because the user interface looks a lot like DaVinci Resolve, but this is not what DaVinci Resolve's sound editing platform Fairlight looks like. Like, especially you do not get the Hellfire spectrograph. I like the Hellfire spectrograph, I have to say.
more it's vibrating, the more voice, and the darker bit, so when the voice is switched off, the lower it is down here is the lower part of your voice, and the higher is the higher part of your voice. So in doing this, we can actually really see what's going on in Pablo's voice and see whether or not some of these native Thai traits in the voice have rubbed off on him naturally as he's developed the Thai language.
สวัสดีค่ะคุณพาโบค่ะ
สวัสดีครับ
ขอบคุณนะ
Sorry, Kap sounded nice.
คะที่วันนี้มาคุยกันกับครูสมุกนะคะ
ไม่เป็นไรครับ
อ่า
Okay, so this is cool. Something interesting. He said,
วันนี้มาคุยกันกับครูสมุกนะคะ
ไม่เป็นไรครับ
okay, so this, ไม่เป็นไรครับ
ไม่เป็นไรครับ
that's not really what you would say in English, and maybe in Spanish, de nada. Like, thank you for being here to talk to me today. De nada. It's nothing. You wouldn't say that in Thai. You would just probably say, "Kap, yindi kap, you're welcome."
Okay. Interesting.
I get the feeling that he is translated directly from Spanish, de nada, subconsciously, and maybe that's sort of linked and come out. If you're really doing algae, isn't that something that should have been short-circuited and then or cut out?
Well, I suppose it depends. And of course, it may yet be is of course the answer. And some things die harder because, like, there are certain things that are just ingrained reflexes. Like, for example, a response to somebody thanking you for something to, being to deprecate the thing you're being thanked for. Or whatever. So, I would say the fact that he hasn't necessarily gotten there yet with that thing does not mean he isn't going to. There is probably that's the sort of thing that would be a strong instinct in favor of it.
Not sure. Anyway, let's continue.
So my thoughts with ALG is that when you start speaking, your brain just jumps to whatever language is probably mostly related to the language that you're learning and just reskins that language. So for me with Spanish, I know for a fact it's reskinning Esperanto in many ways. There are certain
I mean, this kind of goes to towards what I was just saying. Because Esperanto uses a lot of Romance language, roots. I don't know. I guess, let me see. Etymology of Esperanto words. Percentages. I wonder if somebody's actually. This seems like the sort of thing that you would probably. Somebody would have studied. It should be fairly easy. Is there. Linguistic properties, classification. Okay. Predominantly Romantic, morphologically intensively agglutinative, and to a certain degree isolating in character. Okay, so primarily Romance languages. So that is something that you will probably, in some ways, will actually facilitate this process.
structures that are coming out which are purely Spanish because they're small, they're set. I've heard them so many times over and over. But anything that's got any form of complexity, it just seems to revert to a reskinned version of Esperanto.
Well, that's probably, I would say, because you're not used to it yet. What's happening there is you're filling in gaps, I think. that, which I mean, because you're going to have a whole lot of gaps. I mean, 1,000 hours, that is a lot of hours, but on the other hand, that not a lot of years.
And
so I think, I mean, that's kind of a natural thing that people are going to do when they're trying to produce language, especially, and they're not used to doing it. So you're going to have a whole bunch of gaps, and you need to fill them with something.
it's pretty much what you do with any other language, realistically. When
I mean, I do this. I mean, when I've spoken Czech, I do this actually with like Russian and Bosnian. There will be certain things where I don't immediately think of the Czech word for it because I don't do. There are only a few weeks of my life that I've spent where I'm around Czech a lot, and I've spent much more time with Russian. Spent much more time with the Yugo languages. So I will just sort of revert that, and I'll say things like Díky, vrlo dobře. And it's like, yeah, dobře is Czech, vrlo is very not. Hello, Jasper Synth, welcome. I don't think I've seen you here before. Always nice to see new people, and it's interlanguage. Every learner does it. It's part of the process. Yeah, exactly. You are very much, you're sort of filling, you have gaps, and you have something that is a plausible filler for it. And if it results in the person that you're talking to comprehending what you're saying, actually getting what you meant by it, then you're going to use it. Yeah.
You kind of, like most people, they can...
If you don't mind my asking, how do you find us, and where are you joining us from? Always curious.
They're based on their native language, English, so I'm guessing Spanish, for whatever reason, was the one he kind of, in some ways, started to reskin.
That makes sense, because Spanish has a lot of structural properties that are similar. Although I don't think this is so much interlanguaging in that way. I think this is a different thing because we're talking about very ingrained politeness instincts. You learn that these are very much automatic expressions. But I mean, Spanish has a lot of right branching, and Thai is very much a right branching language from how I've gotten to know it. So it isn't surprising. Okay. Well, welcome back. So to me, it isn't surprising that a Spanish speaker would probably find Spanish to be a useful gap filler. Oh, right! Now you mention that, I do remember now. It's like, okay, the name is familiar, kind of, but also kind of not. I'm not always great with names.
And which is why he probably used a structure which a Thai person wouldn't use there. In my series where I reacted to the videos...
I mean, I find that this is, in generally, when it comes to things that you feel kind of awkward not including, because it seems like it's impolite, are really kind of hard. No matter how good you are in the rest of it, there are things you have to sort of overcome because... it's something that you would consider impolite to say, or impolite to leave out, or something like that. So that it doesn't surprise me that he would be sort of, reskinning is the word that Evil Dia uses in a case like that. Precisely because you might find it harder to omit it because it feels impolite.
From David Long, the guy who was he taught via the ALG method for years. He specifically said that with ALG you're building a separate brain for that language that's completely independent from the other languages you know. But my experience is that is totally not the case.
Yeah, I mean, nothing is ever completely independent because it's all in the same physical brain. Interference is a thing that happens. What you are creating is a separate collection of associations. Yeah, I mean, not entirely separate, but essentially you are to the extent possible linking directly the concept with the word. So rather than having sort of an intermediate phase where it's like, okay, you have the word that you're in the language you're learning, and then the word in the language you already know, and then the concept, you're sort of you're creating a direct linkage. But this is an area where we're talking about social graces. There is a strong, there's a strong degree of automatism there, and that makes it actually more challenging because it isn't so much linking a word and a concept as getting used to the fact, and maybe he is used to it in other situations, and in this case he just happened to say it a particular way.
It's obviously every word is independent of every other word in some way, but they're also all interlinked, okay? But conceptually, it's just when you actually start speaking, it's not like you're opening up a new house as they would show in their little diagrams. It's not like you're walking through a new door. No, you're picking up the pieces of the language you know, you're grabbing the words you've heard and you're just shoving them on top. And then as you get corrected, that's when you start building out new structures. So...
And I mean, no, correction isn't what does it. It's more accurate to say that you are developing these things gradually, and some of these things, not everything is immediately going to, the production requires a hell of a lot more familiarity and comfort than comprehension. But this, I really think, is a separate thing. But let's move on, because I'm kind of curious. We're dwelling heavily on something that I think actually has a different aspect to it, other than a non-linguistic aspect. Let me put it that way.
Being overly precise with her pronunciation, these r-rs. In normal Thai speech, originally in Thai, there was no r. These were synthetically, artificially brought into the standard version of Thai because this r is thought to be as a high prestige sound, and you hear it in Sanskrit. Originally, if you listen to anyone from, say, Central Thai, you will hear basically la lua. It's kind of like
I've noticed that actually when watching when watching comprehensible Thai, because sometimes they will say more of a l sound than a r sound, so they say aloi instead of aroi. And I've noticed that when I'm watching like Thai TV shows and movies, that people are much more likely to say aloi.
Cross between an L and a la, a tap.
Yeah.
And now I used to be a TV presenter, and I had coaching on the way that I spoke. They would teach you to r when you were presenting, but it's so unnatural as you present that sometimes you end up r-ing your L's as well. So it sounds like she's really sort of intentionally over-ring her R, maybe because she's speaking to students and she wants them to develop Thai. But
I noticed that a lot when watching comprehensible Thai, because for the most part they the hell out of the R sound.
I don't know if I agree with fully doing it like this, because it's giving students an artificial version of the language that's not really used on the street. But that's her call, and she's presenting.
ควรแนะนำตัวเองเป็นภาษาไทยให้กับทุกคนฟังหน่อยค่ะ
ครับผมชื่อปาโบโรมัน
ผมชื่อ Pablo Roman. My name is, it's pretty standard, sounds pretty good. You could say ผม Pablo Roman นะครับ or ผมชื่อ my name is. Again, saying it ผมชื่อ sounds a bit more like a school kid saying it. But anyway, let's continue.
Yeah, and part of that may also be because this is a Thai learner's channel, so he's just reverting to the way you would say this to a learner as well. That's another aspect too, because this is something. Yeah, I mean, this is definitely from the little logo is a channel for learning Thai, so maybe he's also oversimplifying his Thai.
That's an interesting observation. More like a school kid saying it. Could it be because the type of material he watched early on was like created by teachers who were almost talking to them like kids?
It could, like, I would be more interested in hearing him speak Thai in a situation where it is intended for Thai native speakers, because this is adding a whole other aspect into it.
And that's the structure he adopted? Don't know.
ชื่อปาโบโรมันเป็นครูสอนภาษา
Okay, wow, look, that's interesting. Have a look at this. See this here? Cruel, he said. It's actually cruel. Let me show you
Cruel.
something. Now, here's my trusty consonant compass that many of you have seen many times. Have a listen to the difference between this. So this is the letter
คอควาย
Ka Kwai. Can you hear that? It's got aspiration.
Yeah.
The throat is open. And you've got this air puffing over. And in Thai, they're originally a h and a k. Right now, it's sort of a combination. So it's cruel.
Yeah, this is another thing I've noticed variation on like comprehensible Thai, that they because they don't actually pronounce everything quite the same, between the two teachers. It's always two teachers. And yeah, this is Evil Dia watching Stuart J. Raj, who they kind of look very similar. They look sort of like but okay. Yeah, and they're watching Paulo from Dreaming Spanish speaking Thai to on a channel for Thai learners, which I think probably has an effect on how he's speaking just as well as it has an effect on how the woman he's talking with is speaking.
Cruel. You really hear the there. Cruel. Okay, as opposed to
กอไก่
Gokai. Okay, that would be cruel. Cruel. So this letter here, which is the correct
คอ
one.
ควาย
By the way, that's from the word guru. You hear the word guru, use it in English, G-R-U.
Yes. It is a reaction to a reaction to a reaction, and I'm adding a fourth level, so it is
Guru.
maximum meta-ness.
Cruel. Because in Thai, this voicing of
He's analyzing Pablo from Dreaming Spanish, who apparently learned Thai at AUA. He's analyzing his Thai.
So guru, cruel versus
กอไก่
cruel. Cruel. And you can even see it here. You can see that basically there's no real aspiration. The voice starts instantly. Yeah, that's the voice. If we get a chance later on to
Wait, but can you visually... What does aspiration look like? Can you visually tell in this spectrograph between aspiration and voicing?
hear her pronounce k, you'll see the voice not activating until you get this puff of air, then the voice.
ครูสอนภาษาสเปน
So my takeaway from that is he has not adopted the actual sounds of Thai, and he's kind of probably used something from a language he knows
See, he is really kind of overanalyzing this, I think, because he's speaking quickly, and people make, people's pronunciation varies when they're speaking quickly. I've noticed, actually, with the word "kru," pronunciation varies quite a bit between the different teachers on comprehensible Thai. He's trying to bring a depth of causality to this that I think is not necessarily what's needed here, because the other thing is people hear things, there's also an aspect of hearing here, and he's also speaking quickly. He's speaking into a microphone, and he's trying to also speak very clearly because he knows it's like second language learners. There are all sorts of things. I think Evil Dia is trying to attribute everything to the method, and I don't think that's necessarily what's going on here at all.
Spanish.
This could also just be him misspeaking in one case. People do that.
And then use that in place of whatever the Thai sound is, which means he hasn't acquired that sound fully.
Well, you're going based on a sample of he said it once. He said it literally once. We have if that is how he says "kru" every time. If that is, if he says it and he never aspirates it, then we can say that. But we've heard him say it literally once, and you're sitting here trying to come up with this like deep explanation that has something to do with how he's assimilated the methodology. And no, weón, así no. Mai chai.
Or maybe this is just one mistake, but I guess we'll see. But I've already seen comments.
Yeah, maybe it is. Like, maybe we will see. Maybe let's let him finish.
My Spanish videos where people are like, oh, okay, so evil deer. And like, it's pretty hard to avoid these comments because like they're everywhere. But like people saying like my T is aspired when it shouldn't be. And I'm like, oh.
Aspirated, but okay.
Okay. Wasn't like, I didn't even know that Spanish did that differently, and I've listened to 1,000 hours. Like, you know, am I going to try change it now? Well, in all honesty, I'm not the greatest with sounds, so.
สวัสดีค่ะ
I could probably try if I wanted to, but I'm not going to try because that's not part of ALG. But the point being is, like, I listened to over 1,000 hours of it. I didn't just automatically start pronouncing those sounds correctly because people are already pointing out the sound mistakes I'm making.
ด้วยแล้วก็ทำเว็บไซต์ของตัวเองด้วย
Can I just say, like, in general, his speech is very fluent. And
yeah, I mean, he seems to... speaking as somebody who is not great, whose Thai is very, very limited, my exposure to Thai is very, very limited, but the rhythm of this, like, the rhythm of... This sounds like the rhythm of Thai. I can recognize the rhythm of Thai quite well. It has a certain rhythm to it, and it feels like it. I can't really judge on the level of somebody who really knows the language well, but like this sounds like Thai to me. Even not knowing that he was speaking Thai, I would be like, okay, this sounds like Thai.
Really understand what he's saying. It still does have a very heavy Spanish accent on it, but he does have fluency.
So, okay, so obviously he didn't develop the native accent. And the reason I bring that up is because...
Okay. One of the things that annoys me in these language audits that people do is they sort of treat this as an endpoint when people change their... people's speech changes all the time. In their native language and in other languages. People's speech develops. How long, okay, so he did the full, like, AUA Thai course, apparently. I'm assuming, I don't know. But how long has he been exposed to the Thai language? How long has he been speaking it? This is not his final form. This is not any of our final forms. Like, I mean, you notice this... people's entire way of speaking can change totally, even after they have finished a language course, as it happens. Like, I mean, I remember a friend from high school, from Maharashtra, and, when I knew her in school, she had this... actually really beautiful North Indian accent when speaking English, with a very precise consonants. Had a sort. There was something very like aristocratic about it. I always felt at the time, probably because of the precise consonants or something like that. And then I met her like 20 years later, and she speaks English with a Midwestern accent now. Like, these things develop, is what I'm saying. Like, these things develop over time, even if you're not necessarily even putting any effort into it, just because you're around the sounds. So, okay, so the word that we should be hearing a lot more of in this sort of assessment is yet. Yes, I'm reacting to Evil Dia, reacting to Stuart J. Raj, reacting to Pablo speaking Thai. We have multiple levels here. We are living in a quantum singularity. Hey, Brian.
Leon.
You missed earlier. We were looking at Niku Channel, had this video called 日本人が気づいてもいない日本語の難しさ. Very good video. Highly recommended.
I'm going to say, like, with the hardcore ALG side of things, they would talk about the fact that you could develop a native-like accent.
Oh, yeah. But let's just remember, just because he hasn't yet doesn't mean he isn't going to. Like, how long has he been speaking Thai?
Obviously, Pablo didn't. He's got a Spanish accent.
He didn't yet. Like, come back in 5 years and listen to him talk. Come back in 10 years. People's...
In Thai.
ภาษาสเปนใช่ไหม
เป็น
คะ
โกสไม่ได้เป็นโรงเรียนแบบ
Okay, so even maybe from in English, because we'd say course, he seems to have this unaspirated even happening over the word course.
โกสไม่ได้
Ben course, you can hear.
Actually, that almost sounded like a Georgian ejective.
Here.
โกส
And you see, I knew instantly which letter it was just looking at it. Course.
โกโกโกโกโกโก
Course. And again, in Thai, we wouldn't use the word course really. We'd use the word laksud, ben laksud. But okay,
Laksud.
course. Most Thais would know what the word course is. But again, it's not the normal word a Thai would use, ben laksud.
โกสไม่ได้เป็นโรงเรียนแบบ
That's an interesting one, because he was... Like, Pablo did a year at the school. You just...
Okay, just a year. Yeah, so yeah, these things... When we're talking, it's a work in progress. These sorts of courses will get you to the point where you can sort of be released into the wild and interact with people, maybe. They're not meant to actually get you to the point where you can deliver a dissertation in Thai necessarily. So the way to think about this is a work in progress thing. Like, okay, so how long has he been in Thailand since completing the AUA course? Is the question that I have.
Assumed I'd use the correct word for course, whatever it was there. Like, even in Dreaming Spanish, I must have heard the word course many, many times. I can't say it right now, but, like, maybe they were using the English word for it for whatever reason. I don't know.
I mean, it probably in some cases people sometimes will just use the English words for things.
ไม่มีครูสอนตรงแบบวิดีโอคอลอะไรแบบนี้ไม่มีมีแค่
Okay, maybeครูสอนตรงแบบ video call. You kind of get what he means. There might be an easier way to articulate it, but he's sort of picking how you would describe something quite complex through it.
Okay, it is time for me to wrap up and start thinking about eating things. If anyone wants to continue watching this, even without my insightful commentary, here's where you can find it. Or you can just look up Stuart J. Raj and you can reduce the total number of heads that are on the screen while the discussion is happening. Thank you to everyone who joined in. I hope you enjoyed the stream. He sounds very native in Australian English. I don't think he actually claims to sound native in anything. But I will be back on Friday at 4:30 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time, and I look forward to seeing you all then.